He's employing her to charge former FBI Director James Comey. I'm sure you know the Post well. If you're nominated and you're confirmed as the next Attorney General, what do you do with a message like that?
The president, look, I do exactly what we did with the message last time, and we have thousands and thousands of investigations going on in this, federal investigations going on in this country right now. There is outsized focus on a handful of them because they involve individuals that the president has had significant issues, for good reason, by the way, with in the past. That will continue for the rest of the time he's president. It was the case during the Biden presidency. I mean, that's what being the commander-in-chief is about. I mean, I think the fact that he encourages or directs or expects the Department of Justice to do its job, that those type of messages do not faze me. As a matter of fact, I want a president that does that. I want a president that actually sets his agenda and then sticks to it. And so that's something that the president's done his whole life, even when he's not, commander-in-chief. And so, look, that type of message, he knows that we're doing great work. And believe me, if we weren't, I would expect that he would call me. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
But he wasn't happy in that message. It's going too slowly. Justice needs to be served. What's going on? He appeared to be expressing frustration that the department wasn't actually following through on his wishes.
I don't agree with that. I think the president wears what he thinks. He doesn't keep things from the American people. So, and yes, does he think things were going too slowly? Yes. Are things moving slowly? We have 4 years. So he is somebody who has high expectations for his cabinet and for this administration. It's not just the Department of Justice. It's in every single area. And so that type of communication from President Trump should make every American happy, because it means that there's an executive, a chief executive, that is making sure every one of his cabinet members are working as hard as they should. So telling any of us that we need to move quicker, that we need to make sure we're focused completely on mission, I know that there's a part of this country that takes that with shock and awe, but that's the same president that we have had for 4 years and now for another year and a half, and it's why we're having so much success.
This is Democracy Watch, Mark. That was Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's interim or acting attorney general, saying that Americans should be happy that Trump is deeply involved in the DOJ. So can I get your reaction first and foremost to this wish casting at the hands of Trump's new attorney general?
Look, Pam Bondi was a liar, but she was a politician liar. Like, she would lie by saying, we are not doing Donald Trump's political bidding. We are not weaponizing the Department of Justice. This guy's a whole other kettle of fish. He's a criminal defense lawyer. And so he understands you can't deny the obvious. So rather, you incorporate it into whatever theory you have. And so he is actually turning Donald Trump's weaponization of government against his political opponents into a virtue. I mean, he previously said that it was Donald Trump's duty to go after his political opponents. Now he's saying that we should all be happy that he's weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after Donald Trump's political opponents. I mean, he is a much more dangerous figure. He is an exceptionally good liar in a way that I fear the legacy media will buy, because he says it out in the open. And look, we've got a long road in front of us, not just before the midterm elections, but until Donald Trump leaves office. And you heard him say that they think time is on their side. So I think this is a five-alarm fire. I think this is something that we all need to be paying a lot of attention to. And I am glad that you, Brian, have called this out for this video and making your followers aware of this, because it is something that the legacy media is not doing enough of.
Well, look, I also want to note that you've been covering this relentlessly on Democracy Docket, sounding the alarm louder than anybody else, legacy media or independent media. So highly recommend for everybody who's watching right now, if you're not yet signed up for Democracy Docket, please go ahead, click the link right here on the screen or also in the post description, and make sure to sign up, support Mark's work, elevate his voice. Mark, something that struck me from that what we heard from Todd Blanche was that he thinks that things are moving too slowly. And so what does that look like in a DOJ where they've diagnosed the problem as things moving too slowly?
Right. I mean, they started with the conclusion that they're going to go after Donald Trump's political enemies. They've started with a conclusion that they will not let the facts or the law get in the way. And so if you start with that conclusion, of course, everything sounds like it's moving too slowly because you just want it done, which is the way Donald Trump thinks about this, right? Donald Trump doesn't think about what the law says or what the facts are. He just knows that he wants to use the power, the full force of the federal government to punish his political enemies. And so, of course, everything feels too slow. And Todd Blanche, who should know better, Todd Blanche, who was a federal prosecutor, Todd Blanche, who clerked for a federal judge, Todd Blanche, who was a well-respected lawyer until he cast his entire career with Donald Trump. And I don't think we can look past that, Brian. Todd Blanche is not like I said, a politician like Pam Bondi, who after, she gets humiliated and leaves, can go on to some other political career. He's a young guy who his entire fortune, his entire future rests with Donald Trump. And so, of course, he thinks things are moving too slowly because he is trying to please the guy who he refers to as his boss. And so what it means moving forward is that cases that have been based on slim or little evidence will now move forward with no evidence. Cases that have been moved forward where there is no legal basis will move forward simply to punish through the process the political opponents. And I think we all need to get used to that. We all need to be aware of that. Those of us who have been in the line of fire from him, we need to accept that this is the reality in which we live. It doesn't mean we normalize it. It doesn't mean we accept it as right. But what it means is we steal our spine. We call it out. We don't let it pass without condemnation. But we also don't let it deter us from doing the hard work that we need to do to secure democracy, to make sure, in my case, there are free and fair elections. And in all of our case, to ensure that the end of the Donald Trump era comes as swiftly as it possibly can, whether that is through electing Democrats to Congress, whether that is through impeachment, whether it is through the 25th Amendment. But one way or another, we need to all stand taller than ever before.
I mean, Mark, isn't this just a fool's errand? Because it's not like Pam Bondi wasn't willing to move quickly enough. The problem wasn't the speed with which this DOJ was trying to move. It was the illegality of their actions. And subsequently, judges, for example, striking all of those actions down, whether it was these vindictive prosecutions, whether it was the illegally appointed U.S. attorneys. I mean, the problem wasn't the overt willingness of Trump's lackeys to prostrate themselves for him, whether it was Pam Bondi or Todd Blanche. The problem is that the rest of government kind of seems to be working in the face of these abuses at the hands of Trump and his lackeys.
Yeah, I think the distinction, and it's the thing I originally drew your attention to with the clip, is that Todd Blanche is saying we should not act like we are not doing Donald Trump's bidding. We should not pretend that we are being driven by neutral principles of prosecution. Instead, he is celebrating the idea that the Department of Justice reports to the president.
Yeah.
That if he wants the Department of Justice to go after a political opponent, we should just embrace that and say, yes, that is what we're doing. And that's a good thing. And so, the speed with which it happens, is kind of a proxy, I think, for a larger question of whether the Department of Justice should act as if it is acting neutrally or whether it should just embrace it. I mean, go back to the Pam Bondi social media post where Donald Trump posted that Pam Bondi, the Dear Pam post, Pam, we have to go after these particular Democrats and do it fast. Pam Bondi's position was, as you recall, was essentially, oh, that didn't mean anything. And what Blanche is saying is, yes, it does mean something. And what it means is we should do this and we should do it fast. His supporters, but also to those of us in the pro-democracy movement, that there will not be any attitudinal reticence about going after Donald Trump's political opponents. Yeah. That will be embraced as a positive good by the Department of Justice moving forward.
I mean, I can't, I know this is like a tired game at this point, but can you just talk about the difference in this Republican Party overtly embracing a DOJ that basically acts as an extension, an appendage of Donald Trump versus the fainting spells that this same Republican Party used to do when they had even a whiff of impropriety where a former president spoke for 5 minutes with an attorney general?
Yeah, I mean, the incident you are referencing involved Bill Clinton, who at this point had been out of the White House for, I think, at least a decade. He winds up on the tarmac on a private plane at the same time that the then Attorney General Loretta Lynch is also on the same tarmac in a different plane. And Loretta Lynch had served as a U.S. attorney under Bill Clinton, so he knew her. She's from New York. She'd been the U.S. attorney in New York, and Bill Clinton obviously lives in New York. So, realizing they're both in the same place, Bill Clinton exchanged pleasantries with Loretta Lynch. Like, good to see you. It's been a while, whatever. And Fox News and the right-wing echo chamber just treated this like a national scandal. I mean, treated this like this was, a breach of the most basic principles of DOJ policy, when it was anything but that. And of course, Brian, this wound up bleeding into several years later now when Joe Biden is in office.